started renting and selling real estate pre-internet when everything was done manually. And if you've been around, you know the grief and frustration caused by paper checks. My worst day involves a misprinted check, an overturned beer truck, and 4 hours of wasted drive time. We all have these stories. But over the last 26 years, almost every step in the transaction has been automated. And now, finally, payments have been too. Deposit Link is a missing link that eliminates the inefficiencies caused by paper checks. With Deposit Link, real estate just gets done easier.
Please welcome Matthew Rathbun.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session here. For Thriving to Embrace Change. If you could, real quick, for the few of you who are on camera, if you could just nod or let me know you can hear me okay and you can see me waving. Awesome. Great. Thank you. The rest of you who are not on camera, we are busy right now Googling you to see what you actually look like and why you're in fact hiding your face from the camera. That's fine. You can hide all you want. So we're going to just jump right in here. We have just a little bit of time and a lot of stuff to go through. So my name is Matthew Rathbun. I am a broker here in Fredericksburg, Virginia, overseeing a company that is small for some of you, big for others. We're about 300 and some agents and staff. I am also an active agent. I list and sell, and I have written a lot of curriculum for NAR, for REBAC, REBI, and CRS. So I see a lot of friends here. Thank you guys for coming. Makes me feel good that people who know me actually wanted to show up. That's always good because you sometimes wonder. And we're going to talk a little bit about change, managing change that has done to us and change that we may be affecting others with. But I just wanted to start off with this. Well, first of all, let me start off with this. In the chat section, I'm going to share a link to my webpage at matthewrathbun.com. There are some tools and resources, and some of the stuff we'll talk about here you can find there. It is nothing to buy. I don't know you're there. You don't have to register for anything. It's just some stuff for you after the class. Also, we will be uploading in a little bit a copy of our handout for you with the slides there. So if I'm going too quickly and I forget to, say a URL or something, you're going to have it in the notes. So don't worry about having to write when I get to those things, because I will be going through a few tools to help you with the process of navigating change, at least the processes that have helped me. So let me ask you this, in the chat section, if you would, spend a second and just pop in there. What is a recent change in your business life that has affected you? What is some change in your business life that you think has impacted how you do business? You just put that in the chat section. While you're thinking about that, while you're sharing what change has happened, I want to start talking about what change means in the context of this class. Change isn't an event, right? We talk about a demarc, when that change happened, when COVID happened, when the market went up, the market went down, back in the day, yesterday, tomorrow, we tend to talk about it. But for you and I as agents, change is a state of being. It is always going to be what we're dealing with. It is always going to be something. So today in this session, while we're talking about change, you need to take in through your filter, your worldview filter, that I'm not talking about a specific issue, but just the fact that it's a number of issues and always something. So as I'm looking at you guys loading up the chat, thanks for playing along with me. Lack of inventory is definitely a change. It's made a challenge for, especially if you're a buyer agent. COVID certainly had a huge impact. It actually has changed a lot of culture and a lot of things that come out outside of the illness aspects itself. Yes, escalating prices and inventory, COVID, dot loop has made my life, yes, being paperless is a big deal. Altering your physical space, opening your own company, congratulations, that's awesome and exciting. Less need to go into an office. Yeah, I have to force myself to go now. Well, to be honest, I had to force myself to go into the office before COVID, but now that I'm absolutely set up here and everybody else is working from home, it's even harder. Additional opportunities with EB5, stressed out clients, the need to be able to work completely remotely, MLS changes, crazy prices and lack of inventory, planning a return to in-person meetings, new digital tools, lack of inventory or location, just becoming a licensed agent. Hey, congratulations. Welcome to the business. Good luck. No, I'm kidding. It's great. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. pricing, lack of inventory, and networking dissolving. Okay, so yeah, let's see what else. Positive effects. Daughter left for college. I dropped mine off, and I'm not ashamed to tell you, I cried like a baby for about an hour on the way back home, mainly because of the bill, but also because I left her at college. Fair and affordable housing, agreeing to all the above. COVID, new broker, new city. No cam at the office. That's a huge change. The leads are a scam. Okay, cool. Starting right off that positivity today. Love it. All right. Loan buyer always outbid with, yes, buyers getting loans are often outbid with cash buyers. Okay, cool. So a lot of changes. A lot of us are suffering some of the same things. And a lot of us are enjoying some of the same things. Some of you, and I just wanted to use this exercise, you are all over the country, and some of you are having the same experiences as others. B, some of you went straight for negative changes. Some of you went for positive changes, and that already defines your worldview on change. And it helps me understand a little bit better who you are, so I can cater to how we're going to handle moving forward. Jake, a new baby at home. That is, I just turned 47 last week. I am still asking my wife if we can have another child. She has informed me that we're gonna be grandparents soon. And that is both awesome and very, very sad for me at the same time. So I will say there is not a bad age, but that new baby phase, that new baby smell, and being able to play with them and watch them over the first few years, man, take advantage of it. I teach a lot of other classes of productivity and just about everything under the sun. And the one thing I try to insert in every single class is there is nothing in this industry more important than your family at home and watching those kids grow up. And don't ever leave the dinner table for a missed phone call from a lender. I don't care how important it is. Pay attention to those kids. Okay, here we go. So changing is an event, it's a life state of being. So some of you are experiencing changing in that there's less inventory now. Some of you are experiencing change in that your buyers aren't being able to be competitive because they're getting a loan, whereas they previously were okay. Some of you have new children in the house. And each of these things may be passed along to the next person in this webinar. It could be you tomorrow who are having a kid or a grandkid, or it could be business change. It could be a number of things. It is always a state of being. The impact on us in the context of being real estate agents is that we are knowledge workers. So we don't apply that title as often as we should for what we do, but people don't hire us because we actually own the home to sell. They hire us to help navigate them and be their guide through the processes of buying and selling a home or land or property management. And so for change to happen for us means we have to be ahead of it and be able to migrate it into our regular business practice, because that's what they're hiring us for, is to understand, foresee, address, and work with change that is occurring for them. The industry is about 116 years old, right? The organized part of real estate, about 116 years old. We went through a pretty significant amount of time where we went virtually unchanged. The industry was what the industry was. Technology started expediting changes, but also consumerism evolved and altered as we went forward. And some of those evolutions in our industry have been, well, not well received. Some of them have been embraced very heavily. And those who embrace the change are the ones who are making more money off of it. They are increasing their business opportunity by seeing where that curve's going and jumping out in front. We've watched as the immediacy of access to data and to agents has changed. How many here feel that pain of sitting down after showing property and realizing you've got 15 text messages, a bunch of emails, 2 missed voicemail calls? I remember 20 years ago when I got started that like getting a Palm Pilot was like the heavens opened up and angels started singing. And some of the people here are like, yeah, I'm younger than your Palm Pilot. That's fine. I hate you, but that's fine. But that Palm Pilot came out and all of a sudden I'm like, I've got my daytimers digitized. That stupid like green screen was everything. I mean, I kept track of everything. And then the association gave us this big, ugly clamshell that goes over it so we could open up our super boxes. And I didn't have to carry a little extra digital device that had to go in a cradle. It could be connected to this. And then the internet came and we could get cellular service to our BlackBerry so we could check our email. And I just kept remembering and thinking, this is so cool. Like I can check my email sitting outside of the house in the middle of nowhere and be connected. And now, I don't know, guys, I remember growing up, my mom there's five of us, and the other four were handfuls. I was a very, very good child, but the five of us would just go talk to our mom, and our mom would say things like, I am changing my name to the F word so you guys can't call me anymore. I don't think she understood that. Like, let's just talk about cursing for a minute. Like, adults curse amongst each other, but not in front of children. Children curse amongst each other, but not in front of the adults, but everybody's doing it. So I don't think she knew that we knew those words, but she would say things like, I'm changing my name to a curse word so you guys can't call me anymore, say anything, call me out or ask for me. And I kind of feel like my mom sometimes, like, I wish my iPhone would break. Like, it won't, because it's an Apple product, and Apple product is freaking amazing. But sometimes I just wanted to stop getting emails and phone calls and texts, and my assistant sending me stuff on Slack, and my administrative staff sending me stuff on Teams and different platforms to get my contract. And our clients have immediate access to us now, and they have access to all that content. They have their own platforms. They're looking up listings you didn't even get the email for, to say just want to market for them, and they're finding them on somebody else's social media account or Zillow or Realtor or one of those other aggregators. And they expect you to be immediately connected with them. And then we have consumers that are not shopping with us anymore. And that change, some agents have been recently telling me, like, we missed the time in the car with your clients. I don't even understand that. Like, I hated having people in my car. And sometimes I had this view of maybe not even slowing down as they just rolled out the door at the office when I dropped them off, just because I was really tired of them being in the car and constantly, yammering about stuff or bickering with their spouse or whatever it was. So I wasn't a big fan of shopping along with the agents, but they are. The clients. The clients are going to open houses and then calling you. They are making buying decisions, doing sight unseen offers because they could see it through a virtual tour and listing photos online and all the other resources that gets them connected to it. Data is no longer controlled by you and I as agents and brokers. That data, and it never was ours. I know a lot of people are like, it's my listing data, and other people are taking it. The seller wanted a buyer in the door. Whatever means by which we can get the buyer there and get that in front of them is a valuable tool to us when used properly. And so that data is now much more ubiquitous. It's much easier to get for consumers. We have, actually, that says dorms, it's supposed to be forms, changes in forms and practices, constant changes because of litigation, rules and laws and common practices, and then regulations and court actions, which we'll talk about a little later. All these evolutions of technology and consumer mindset are changing how we do business. The business model we have established over the 115, 116 years as an organized industry was catered to the generations at the time we had to do business with. Well, right now, you and I are catering to four different, very distinctively different generations, from a silent generation finding a forever home, to a Gen Z who watched a bunch of HGTV and inherited some money at 24 and now want to go buy a house and do a flip. How they communicate and how they want us to do business has changed, which means we have to alter to who they are. Part of being a knowledge worker is to share knowledges in the way that it benefits the person in front of us, not the way we want business to be done. And technology certainly has a huge part in this. And it's not simply real estate. This is every industry. And a lot of real estate agents, especially those of us who have been doing it for a while, tend to think that the industry changes are just, it's real estate changing all the time. Every industry, the world is going through this process. Now, I want to talk about the law of diffusion, because in a minute, we're going to get into how do we capitalize on this change? How do we develop a positive world outlook? And how do we actually make money and position ourselves better as knowledge workers in this? We have something called the law of diffusion. And if you've heard anybody talk about being innovative, or anybody talking about selling products in the past, probably, 50 years, they've talked about early adopters and then migrated to this law of diffusion model. For a law of diffusion model, we're looking at innovators, the ones who are really out there. When I was out there with that Palm Pilot, I had the very first Palm Pilot that had cellular service. I was the envy of my office. I walked that real estate office. I'm like, guys, I have found fire. The troglodytes can come out of the cave. And I showed them what I could do to check my email on the go. And oh my God, remember when we found keyboards on cell phones? And so now we didn't have to hit the 7 3 times to get a letter to pop up when we were texting somebody. We thought we were so cool. Remember when they stopped charging us for each individual text? We owned the world. But the people who grabbed those things first, the first of you to get the BlackBerry, remember the 8330, very popular phone for real estate agents, we didn't know what to do with it. but we had it. And it didn't have a lot of apps. I mean, when I got the iPad, I didn't know what to do with it, but I thought it was cool. It was like, it's a really big iPhone. This is awesome. And I started teaching classes for agents on how to use their iPad. And people were like, okay, that's cool. I'm coming to class to see if I'm going to buy one. The innovators, the ones who actually are using things uniquely, the first agent to start doing YouTube videos to explain to their clients about the benefits of a neighborhood, who started putting virtual tours of their homes on a website so consumers could sit at home and with VR goggles or just their phone, walk through the full house without just seeing the pictures that we posted. Our early our innovators and then early adopters, these visionaries go, I'm taking that to the next level. I'm going to do this thing. And that 25 or so percent in the early market phase are typically the people who benefit the most out of this. So real estate agents who are now going, how do I build my brand on, for example, TikTok? And there's this agent you see who's got 30,000 followers as a real estate agent talking about funny things about real estate. And people go, how do I do that thing? There's a chasm from the early adopters and innovators where it basically is this huge gulf that some people have a hard time jumping over to get to being the early majority. And then finally, like, okay, I get it. I'm going to get on TikTok and I'm going to do some dancing and I'm going to do whatever you do on TikTok. I don't get TikTok. I will say for the first time in my life, I'm going to say something has come out online that I'm just like, yeah, I don't know, this isn't for me. But I do know there's agents on there building audiences. I have reached the chasm for that where I'm like, there's so many things that I've considered myself to be an innovator, early adopter of, that I've now reached something in this one thing that I'm not seeing the virtue yet for real estate. So what's going to happen is those agents who do see it now, who are jumping on, who are building an audience, are going to have bigger audiences than those of us who get into the early majority stage when we're now all joining up on TikTok to try to do some business stuff. But let's change it up to just in general, virtual tours. Let's make that an easier one. There were agents who put their listing was on there and they had a virtual tour and buyers could go online or on their phones and look through it. And early adopters said, I'm going to make this readily available. I'm going to share that link on social media. I'm going to get it on my website. This is going to be a differentiator for me in my community as an agent that people are going to want to work with me. And then we get to this early majority. This next 34% of real estate agents are going, okay, I'm going to use those virtual tours in my listings as well. For us in this industry, generally speaking, most the pragmatists, those people, that 34% of the early majority and the late majority, the next 34%, are only doing things because their seller has said, I am not hiring you unless, or their buyer said, I'm not hiring you unless, or the broker saying, you have to do this or else go elsewhere, or you have to do this because this is the new form and we're not publishing the old one anymore. Unfortunately, that 70% in the middle of the early and late majority are the ones who are forced to do it in our industry. And then that last 16% are the ones who right now you still have a fax machine in your office and you're swearing it's going to come back in the style. The laggards, the people who are only doing things because they're dragged into it, made to do it, and even then they're still putting it off. We use these weird phraseologies in this industry that are bizarre to me if you're trying to put a positive mindset together to do business. And for those of you who don't know, and this is covered in many other places, if you are not a positive person, you are not going to be as financially successful as you could be if you were a positive person. If you saw yourself as a knowledge worker who had to adopt these things because it was a great opportunity for you and your clients, and you started perceiving changes as positive, you are more likely to gravitate towards them, master them, and execute on them well. But unfortunately, we still use phrases like, I'm just managing the change. You can't manage change. Change happens sometimes at our whim and sometimes at others, but change is going to happen. If you're trying to figure out how to manage it, you're going to manage it. You're going to try yourself crazy because you're trying to put it in boxes. You have to embrace it. You have to go, this is good for good or bad. It is good for me to be an early adopter so I can grow with this technology, or this practice. And I want to give you an example. I said earlier, there's voluntary changes and there's involuntary changes. Voluntary changes are changes that you've elected to make. A new CRM, a new brokerage, a new baby, a new partner, building a team, getting rid of a team, going back to being a single agent. There's involuntary changes. Your standard forms committee changed something. Your The technology came out, your broker has changed to a different CRM, whatever it is. Those are things you have to adapt to. I want to give you a case study of one that sounds like a voluntary change, but was actually something I felt was pressed upon me. About 8 years ago, I was taking a class. I take a lot of classes outside of the industry as well. I was taking one on digital security aspects because I was looking at my firm, again, roughly 300 and some agents and staff, and how we were doing things across 9 locations. And I wanted to make sure that our company was going to be positively, or on the front side rather, and in a positive light, should we ever get audited for any digital issues. And about that time, again, 7, 8 years ago, we had 3 different settlement companies, one of them involving our clients, who had hundreds of thousands of dollars in losses because of email scams. And as I'm taking this class, and again, this is taught by one of the people teaching, it was a former FBI agent. And I was sitting there listening, and it really struck me when he said this, but I knew it was true already. The real estate industry is the highest targeted industry in general for scam artists on a digital platform. 1, we have a tremendous amount of trust with our clients. 2, we have a tremendous amount of data in our hands, from our online portals to what's emailed to us. Think about loan applications, copies of checks, all that stuff. We have all this stuff in our email. Unfortunately, 3, we are the least digitally secure industry in the United States. We have the least amount of encryption and precautions and good practices to keep our clients safe in a digital platform. And lastly, we have the least amount of knowledge about technology of almost any industry that deals with any type of consumer data. Again, financial information, real estate, whatever. So we're an easy target. And I know it's true that over and over again, when I teach these classes and I teach digital security classes or teach technology classes or even just contract stuff, I'm a risk management guy at heart. Technology is my fun place. That over and over again, I hear everybody in class has an experience where either themselves, their client, or somebody was attempted to be hacked, or their clients were hacked and wired money where they weren't supposed to be. And so 8 years ago, I was looking at this, took this class, looked at our practices, and I said, as an agent, I am not going to ever send over a photocopy of a escrow deposit check to another party by email, especially if that agent is using AOL or Yahoo or Juno or Earthlink or something we know isn't secure. Because frankly, for you and I, the only things that are secure are the email accounts you pay for. Your free Gmail isn't secure, but paid G Suite or Workforce or whatever it's called now, does have encryption. Your Outlook emails, your Office 365 emails have encryption, and pretty much nothing else has anything other than basic security. And I'm going to add two-part authentication. So if I log into a new computer or device, I have to acknowledge it through the text message to make sure it's really me. And every device gets a separate password. So if you have my iPhone, you can't log in anything else. So I put all those practices in place, but I also said, I am not going to send over a copy of the escrow check with my offer anymore. And so I started surveying, because in a change, when I make a change, I need to know who the stakeholders are. Who is this going to impact? Now, I'm lucky in the fact that at my particular company, I make the policies. I'm the broker, so I make the policies. But if I were an agent only, I would, of course, need to consult my broker. I also went and spoke to a couple of friends who have been around for a while, and I found out for 35 years here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I'm also licensed in DC and Maryland. And so DC, Maryland, Virginia, the only 3 places I can speak in authority of this. I talked to some of the elders in the industry, and I could go back as far back as 35 years. They were either hand delivering or photocopying, when we got to the fax machine, personal checks back and forth. And I stopped for a minute and I said, okay, why? It's not required by law. It's not required by the contract. This is simply a practice that we have passed down from one agent to another for at least at this point, 35 years. There's no value in having a photocopied check. It's not something you can tender or render. It doesn't prove it was deposited. It doesn't have any value. I don't ask for photo IDs from the buyers to make sure they're real people and signature samples from other legal documents. I don't need this. This wasn't important. And so I personally made the choice to say, I'm going to change. My team will no longer submit with their offer any reflection of a contract, of a check. And what we started looking at in our change process was, okay, who's impacted? Well, our clients are positively impacted. We have reduced the risk of a security breach related to this information getting out. There's no negative for our clients. We have impacted the other agents we're sending it to, because of course, other agents, they're programmed. They're only going to do what their brokers told them to do, and what they've done repeatedly, and what other people are doing. They don't deeply think about the practice. They just do the practice. And that's what I found out, how in my marketplace anyways, nearly every agent I sent an offer to said, oh, this is an incomplete offer. You don't have a photocopy of the check. And every time I would very politely and professional explain to you then what I just did to you, that it's not secure for us. They're not using encrypted email. We can do other things. And so if it was insisted upon, we would take a black marker and redact out the routing number and the bank ID and a copy of what a signature looks like. And all you're left with was a name and a number on a check, which still meant, and we also blacked out the check number. Like, it basically, you had nothing. You had the name and the fact that a check may have existed. And we had agents going, I can't present your offer without it. Now, this change for their practice was breaking that thread, that commonality in all the practices. And it was disruptive for some of them. Let me tell you, 8 years later, our state association attorneys, and this was not just Matthew made them all change this. Our state association attorneys, our contract and forms changed. The practices changed. We see very few checks coming through with offers anymore. But it took me years of preaching this as an instructor, as a broker. We are the largest company in town, and we stopped doing it as a company about 1.5 years later. And it spread. That change spread. And now our clients are more secure for it, because no one really knew why we did it in the first place. Just to prove there was a check, it doesn't mean anything. I can go photocopy one off the internet. Plus, most of my clients don't. As we progressed through this, we found not only was this change better for security reasons, although slightly disruptive, and we had to explain to agents, you have to present all offers. You don't get to pick and choose what format they are. You can't refuse to present the offer. The seller never cared. And the seller never knew they were supposed to get a photocopy of an escrow check. That was purely an agent-driven practice from an antiquated time period. What we then went to in our company was tools like Deposit Link, our sponsor for today, and other tools out there that we just said, hey, we're going to send you a link to deposit your EMD. Just click the link in your text message, and now there's no paper trail. And what we can do is just print out a report that the money was received. So if the other agent says, okay, your escrow was to be deposited within 72 hours of ratification, we can now send evidence without any breach of security. There's no routing numbers or anything, but there is at least a piece of evidence from the deposit system that was done digitally. We got rid of checks. And all this migration and all these policy changes and all these regulatory changes gave us great opportunity to talk to people about change being necessary, because the world and technology and security and all these other things changed. And as we go through that, the question is, where are you now? If I came to you with an offer and said, here's our offer, and I'm not giving you a copy of the check because it's not in my client's best interest, you don't need it, doesn't mean anything, please present my offer. How do you respond if you're in a marketplace where that's common? Well, hopefully you know the basics, because if you know the basics, I can change to the practices. So where are you now? Are you a positive person when it comes to change? Or are you a negative person? Because change is going to keep coming. We know where we are now by using tools like a SWOT analysis. So if you're not familiar with SWOT analysis, it's an incredibly powerful tool that almost every business who does their annual business planning uses. And we monitor ourselves or our teams or brokerages, depending on where you are in that process, by these 4 elements: strength, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. The strength is you. Are you nimble? Were you able to pivot? When COVID happened, were you able to adjust and go, I'm going to find safe practices to show homes and get homes in the market. I'm going to be able to market homes that nobody we have to go in them. I'm going to use the virtual tour tools, live streaming video. Did you have that, or were you trying desperately to stay the way you always practice and continue to make money? For our company, when COVID happened, our senior leadership team, the 4 vice presidents who work for me and the owner and I, we sit down, and within an hour, we had a plan. 9 office locations, 300 agents. We said, everybody's going home by the end of the day. Grab whatever you need to work virtually until we figure out what's going on. And so everybody took their laptops home and all the rest. But for years, we had been paperless. No one printed anything for well before this happened. Our transactions, we used DocuSign, some of you used Dotloop and SkySlope and some other companies. Everything was already there. So once a week, one of our admins had to stop by an office, pick up checks and deposit them in the bank. And that was the only physical presence that was needed. We conducted all of our meetings and training by virtual. We did literally daily updates for the first 3 weeks about what you can do. We got a patented class. Like, we went through the process of getting a certification for our agents about safety and health and marketing in this market. We digitized every device. That brochure at the house was no longer a book that anybody picked up, because remember, in the early stages, we were all cleaning groceries off the, or cleaning up the bag the groceries came in when they were delivered to our front porch, right? We were super vigilant about that. We embraced that change. We started recruiting agents as a broker because people saw we were different, and we weren't hiding, and we weren't yelling and screaming, and we weren't denouncing that COVID even exists. We were making marketing campaigns on YouTube about how we're going to keep people safe, and the steps were taken. We did a lot of stuff that grew our company and grew our production. We had a pretty significant increase in production, and clients were coming to us specifically because of the marketing campaign. Our strength was that we adapt to change very, very quickly, especially for our size of a company. Our weaknesses, I don't like reverting backwards. When we started, for those of you who said you were brokers and leadership roles in your company, we started doing our office meetings instead of in person, we started doing virtually. And from that time till now, even though we've been back in the offices for a long time and back in physical spaces, we still get 4 times the amount of attendance to a virtual meeting than we did the in-person meetings we had. It's less impact on the agent. We're able to deliver different tools. We're able to deliver the same message simultaneously. We reduced staff time delivering these messages. It was very positive because we made those changes and found the change were good, and we kept with them. The weakness is I don't like going backwards. Now I don't want to go back into the office anymore. So, but also a weakness is I tend to do technology and systems before people sometimes. So I knew that about myself. So when COVID hit, knowing that my weakness is I sometimes forget people in the process of new systems and deploying new tools, I asked my assistant to go through the list of our agents, all 300, and go, which of these live alone? Because I'm going to go drop off meals. I'm going to call them up. I'm going to make sure they're okay. I'm going to send them handwritten notes to check on them. I'm going to have other people involved in their lives so that they're not left behind. Because we're in the early stages of COVID, we had no idea what was going on and how long. So we wanted to take care of the mental health of our salespeople and staff. Which of our agents have health issues? And we went through what we knew of them. We don't do health screening on our agents and staff, but we made sure that they were given even more assistance and care, because I know my weakness is tech first and risk management first and not people first. I was aware of it because I did this evaluation and I could address those things. And then opportunities and threats are things on the outside. So strength and weaknesses is you personally or your team or entity. What are your strengths or your weaknesses? But opportunities and threats are the outside influences we have to deal with. So an opportunity sometimes could be derived from a threat. So a threat to our industry is change, right? The consumers are more in control. That means we have to be adjusting. That means we have to show more value in everything we do. And that's also the opportunity. The opportunity could be we're getting to a healthy market right now. If you've got a seller, if you've priced right, it's gone. Most of us, our listing inventory, we normally average about 220 active listings at a time. We have 17 now. And all of those are at a luxury price levels because it takes longer to sell. And almost every inventory or piece of inventory we get, every listing is selling within 24 hours. We don't do coming soon. That is just a straight up fair market opportunity. And they're going really quick for higher than asking. And so that seems like an opportunity because there's so much activity and buyers are out there, at a feeding fest. But it's also a threat because agents sometimes can adopt to it. They're not putting right practices, and their mental health is declining because they're up in the middle of the night reviewing 100. We actually had an agent receive almost 100 offers on a property in 24 hours. And she's trying to review every single one without an assistant, without a transaction coordinator. She didn't sleep all night. Now she's trying to negotiate the next day. We have to address those things, right? Those threats and opportunities, but they're outside influences. That's W is you. A great thing, you have to do it in writing. If you want to be good at change management and not change management, and embracing change and adjusting your business practice, you have to do things in writing. SWOTanalysis.com is absolutely free. And for those of you who are teachers, leadership roles, brokers, whatever, grab this link especially. Everybody should be doing their own business practice. You're a business entity, you're a knowledge worker. You need to know what direction you're going in. SWOT analysis allows you to have an interactive tool to do your SWOT analysis, to save it, render it to whatever document you want to for review. But it also has a ton of other tools on there: business planning, financial planning, just a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's all free for what you do. I find it's a great tool for me to sit down and adjust. When I'm looking at change, because our market and industry has been rapidly adjusting over the past 2 years, I'm not doing an annual evaluation of my SWOT analysis or my business plan. I'm now doing a every 6 months, both me as an individual agent, as well as as a broker for our company, as the EVP for our company. I'm looking every 6 months to go, where are we? Because the amount of change in this market over the past 2 years is basically equivalent of 4 years worth of industry change in the preceding 4 years to before COVID. And so I have to look more often. Are we adjusting? What's our view look like of the world? What's happening now? What things are going to impact us now, tomorrow, 5 and 10 years from now? This helps me forge a positive mindset, because when things meet expectation and isn't thrust upon us, we're more likely to address them well. Now, I'm going to skip for a minute for somebody to think about, and you can always share stuff in the comment section. I am glancing at it when I go through there. The forging of a positive mindset is important when we're looking at change. I'm going to give you 2 quick examples. This 2 weeks ago in the Commonwealth of Virginia, one of our governmental bureaucracy or bureaucratic entities released an interpretation of a 22-year-old law that I quite frankly thought everybody knew but didn't. And then in our case in Virginia, if you had a settlement that was not being done in the same company, so if you had buyer and seller going to the same settlement company, this didn't affect you. But if they were using 2 different settlement service providers, the seller's company had to be an attorney. It couldn't be a non-attorney settlement service. And that started in 1997. That's been a law ever since, but no one really enforced it or paid attention to it. Well, then now they're enforcing it. And that means an agent can't send their seller to their favorite settlement provider. They can only send them to an attorney for representation. And all of a sudden we saw everybody's mind blow up. And it's been chatter and anger and nonstop, education about what this really means. And the reality, it doesn't have a huge impact to the day-to-day lives. And the sellers actually make out better, because they have legal advice, generally for the same amount of money or even cheaper than some of the settlement services. And you could tell the agents who are like, oh my God, the world's changing and I can't refer to my same person, instead of the other people going, all right, change is good. Let me see what's positive about this. Oh, the sellers get a higher level of service. The cost isn't anymore. All right, I have to refer to this company instead of the other one. It started to reveal things about people, about their ability to change and adapt. But let me give you a big one. And most of you have probably been following this for a while. We have a pretty significant lawsuit looming over the industry, class action suit, multiple sellers, and NAR is doing a hell of a job of navigating that lawsuit. But it's not just them. There's major franchises, Realogy and Berkshire and Remax, major MLSs are all defendants in this lawsuit. And the premise of the lawsuit is this: that I, the seller, should not have to pay the buyer agent a commission to get an MLS. It's that simple. They're not saying they won't pay a buyer agent commission if it's negotiator asks, but the simple thing is saying that the seller is saying, look, I want my house in MLS because that's where majority of marketing is occurring. That's where majority of buyers, it's really coming from Zillow, but how do you get in Zillow? Through MLS, they get that. But we don't understand why we have to pay a buyer agent who's working against us. Remember, the buyer agent is typically making an offer for as low as possible to represent the buyer's interest. They're negotiating the seller to pay closing costs or negotiating the seller to make repairs. There's a lot of questions the seller has that are legitimate questions that need to be vetted and sorted out. And because for 114 years, we've never really sit down with the seller and said, this is why this has to happen. Now let's pretend for a minute that lawsuit has some change in our industry. I personally think it will have some impact on our industry. How do you pivot now? And I know we overuse that word. How do you change or modify what you're doing to adjust to the fact that the seller is no longer paying your buyer agent? Now, immediately when I told the story, most of you probably have already heard about it. If you've been paying attention to the news or any of the emails that come out from NAR Legal or any of the updates from your associations, you knew this has been going on for a while. But let's presume that lawsuit went. I'm not sure that it is, but let's pretend that they did. Immediately, some of you in your minds went, oh, we're screwed. What about my VA buyers? They can't pay a buyer agent. The VA won't allow them. You didn't stop and go, okay, is this better for the consumer? And should pressure be put on the VA to now modify that very antiquated rule that says buyers can't pay their agents for services? because that may be the only way that any service provider, any real estate agent will take on the buyer in the future if they're VA, is if the VA allows them to negotiate, the buyer to negotiate. So now my wheels start turning to go, what can I do as an agent, RPAC, what can I do as an agent to get my government affairs director at my association to help influence legislators or state or national level, whoever you need to talk to start to modify policies of lenders that may be antagonistic to what the lawsuit's going to be. Because if we start now, then in 3 years or 4 years or however long it takes for that lawsuit to happen, if it changes anything, we have already started a process to fix our obstacles, as opposed to waiting for the change to happen to us and then figuring out, well, how do we do it just now? Now, having a positive attitude for me says, I need to start doing even more than I have to be of value to my buyers. I need to show them that I am worth the money that I am going to charge them, whether the seller's paying it or whether they have to pay it. I have to figure out, how do I negotiate properly on behalf of a buyer who may not have the funds to close, to have the seller see the value and then being represented by a buyer agent. And if I start that process now and I start executing on those negotiations and those marketing pieces and those campaigns and changing the voice of this issue now, then if that change were to happen, I'm in a really good market position to have already shown the value to potential buyers of why I have some value being paid. But instead, we have agents still running marketing advertisements, even contrary to NAR's recent change of the Code of Ethics, saying, work for me, the seller pays, or my services are free. See, when you have a change mindset, it starts to say, what am I going to do in the future through this process to make sure that people get the value? I would never, ever, in 20 years, I've never once said my services are free, because they're not. When the buyer brings money to the seller's taking a portion of money bought and investing it and paying for these commissions. So the buyer and seller, both directly or indirectly, are contributing to the compensation we're receiving as agents. But I want them to understand that that I'm not free. This is what I do for a living, just like they have a job and they expect to get compensated for the work that they've done. So it makes me have the ability to change with whatever is thrust upon me when I start looking forward to see what it is. Whether it's technology or regulatory issues or change or form issues with your association, the chasm between where you are and changing and adopting the new standard is wider as you neglect those changes. So let me say this. Let's say tomorrow tomorrow we go, there's no more paper between the trucking, whatever convoys that are coming out of Canada, the shipyards don't have it. We agree that killing trees is probably not the best for our world. Whatever the change is, we decide there's no more paper. If you have not today been already using paperless systems in your iPad for taking notes and writing contracts in zip forms or what DocuSign or whatever you're using, now all of a sudden the change is here because you haven't adopted all these other micro changes throughout the career. You are super far away from being in the market. And that's what's happening to a lot of agents, is changes happening to them instead of it being adopted, because they've neglected their own education through the proper use of technology or marketing. When COVID first hit, we sold most of our homes sight unseen through virtual tours and videos. We had a huge leg up because we already had those systems in place to very easily start executing and sharing those in all the platforms, knowing that the buyer was looking for that. We were doing that well before the COVID change. And now sellers don't want people in their house. And so virtual tours and videos we were already doing were selling homes. That was what was winning even in our listing presentations. Now, in retrospect, or I mean, not in retrospect, in contrast, rather, other companies in town were actually calling our agents and going, how did you do that? Brokers were calling me and going, how did you deploy that system? How are you getting those things up? Now, guys, Matterport came out, 8 years ago? It shouldn't have been a surprise that this was a tool and a resource for people, COVID, but they were so far behind, it took them months to get everything in place to properly market and deploy these things. But if you were adopting these changes and keeping an eye on them throughout, if you're looking at the fact that sellers may not have to pay buyer agents to get it to MLS, If you're looking at the fact that technology is going to continue increasing and virtual reality is a huge part of what we're doing, augmented reality is a huge part of what our future is going to be, and it absolutely sells homes, you start to adopt those technologies as you go along. If you're still sitting there with your fax machine hoping it's coming back in style because you really like that, or you really loved that networking, or you get together in a group at the association, or you get together at the chamber events, well, guess what? You got a whole generation of people now who have your future buyers and sellers, because your baby boomers, they're still active. They're at the higher price point, but they're only 19 to 20% of most marketplaces for buying and selling. And even the baby boomers, remember, they're the founders of most of this technology we use, are going, you know what? Maybe having drinks by virtual for their office and then talk about things is okay. Maybe what we're doing in this classroom right now is okay. I don't need that. I need to be able to be likable, know how to use the tools and engage better that way. Or maybe it's social media has become the platform we get to meet and greet new people instead of the same 20 people who came to your Chamber of Commerce events over and over that you already knew and already knew you. And the cool thing about social media is they only get to see the part of you that you want the world to see, the good part. In the chamber event, man, 3-4 drinks in, I started telling everybody what I think of the world. That is not a good look for me. I am better through an Instagram filter. So changing and looking at these adjustments instead of fighting them and trying to go backwards all the time, which seems to be the default for a lot of industries, including ours, helps you to close that chasm, to make change easier. It's not such a big leap when you've been embracing that change that's been leading up to whatever change may be impacting you now. All right, so in the comment sections, the buyer always pays the, I'm gonna go back up. Chris said the hyper technology and decarbonization are in contest with one another. Stability is smart. Hyper AI integration home is only reliable insofar as the grid is on. Net zero is the future of the house. And yes, some of that I absolutely agree with. I think we're getting there. I think we are definitely going to get there. It's just going to take a little while. Yes, you block the account number. I think it's better just not to send the check over at all. That way, if we're audited, if there's ever any question, we don't have to address it. The buyer always pays the full commission because it is in the sales price. When you buy a car, you pay the price, not two different prices, price for car and additional price. Steve, I think, again, we all have a great way to present that commission argument. I'm going to say this. The sellers are not selling their house for X% less if they don't have to pay a buyer. The builders are not reducing their price if they don't have to pay an agent. The system is based on highest and best market price. So whatever position you need to adopt for your marketplace, because every marketplace is different, is what you're going to be able to present to your clients. But think about now how we address these issues if that lawsuit prevails or any portion of it prevails, and we no longer can require a seller to pay a buyer commission to get an MLS. Yeah, seller is paying the brokerage and brokerage is sharing that fee. Okay. Now, change is also easier to control when you're embracing and controlling existing chaos. We have something called the reticular activating system. And in 1957, scientists wrote studies about this. And most of you don't know it as reticular activating system. You know it as in, I couldn't sleep last night. I wrote it down on a piece of paper and then I slept well. Anybody else have that experience? So our brains are computer chips and they don't shut down when we tell them to. How many of you have ever, like a couple of nights ago, you're sleeping, you remember that stupid thing you did in second grade? And now you can't sleep because of that person you've never seen again in your life who may not have really existed because our memories aren't all that great. The reticular activating system says our brains keep working on problems and thoughts and ideas and issues until it feels that they have been offloaded and dumped. So if you're laying there in bed at night and you can't sleep and you roll over and you write it down on a piece of paper, now you can sleep. It's because you've let the brain rest. If you are managing, you're going through your day and you're showing your property to client A, but you're thinking about that crappy home inspection report that came in this morning as you're trying to negotiate, you are not focusing properly on one thing or the other. You're not doing the great work. And you sure as heck aren't looking for the future of the industry, what changes are going to impact you and how to adjust to them. Your brain is for having ideas. It's not for holding them. You've got to get that stuff to notes and papers. This is why business plans are important and written goals are important. And whatever affirmations you need should be in writing and not just stuck in your brain. It does not work. You've got to have organization systems for managing these things. So a couple ideas. Make sure you have a discipline in life. Make sure you're keeping, if it's a paperless system, if it's a routine, if you're working out in the morning, for me, it's ignoring the phone and email, everything for the first hour so I can work out, I can meditate, I can get breakfast, and then read the news, and then go check email so that my first hour or so is healthy. That my children and my wife are important aspects of my life, and that they are more important than an appointment. If I tell my wife I'm taking her to dinner on Wednesday night and somebody calls to make a scheduled appointment, I'm sorry, I already have a meeting scheduled. Because if your family sees that you're blocking out time for them, they're going to find themselves important. If you keep changing your schedule because a buyer came into town, they're going to understand that buyer is more important than they are. But if you had two buyers, you wouldn't reschedule the first buyer for the second one to come into town, but you're rescheduling me because you expect me to understand. It doesn't work long-term. You got to have a disciplined life with discipline in your email and organize in your email, organize your transaction, systems in place, time blocking skill sets. Paperless practices makes it a lot easier. You can have stuff right in the fingertips. You don't have to look for stuff. It's not piled. It's not some remote area. Making sure you're focused on what you're working with at the time. Stop chasing little red dots. Turn off notifications on your phone. Use focus tools. There's a video on my website if you want it, if you're an Apple user, where I can click a button and go, I'm teaching right now. No email alerts come up, no text alerts come up, no instant messages, no social media comes up. I set that at 8 o'clock at night and I stop looking at everything. The little red dots are demanding we give them attention when really we have other things we should be doing. Make sure you're demanding more of others. If I have a home inspector, I should not have to get on a phone call to schedule time with him. He should have on his website or her website a link where I can go fill it out and schedule times that are available. Or I can use Doodle and other tools where all my vendors are working on my schedule and I'm not working on theirs. That my clients are going to work within a time structure, and I am not going to be chasing phone calls and emails at 11 o'clock at night for them because there's very little I can do outside of normal banking business hours. It'll wait the next morning. Make sure you're using the right partners. Is your settlement attorney, is your lender, is your broker supporting all of these things? Are they also adapt and change? If I've got to go fax something to my lender, they are not adapting to change and they are slowing me down and making it harder for me to be a future-minded agent. And to be realistic with yourself. What can you adopt? What can you change? When do you need to hire an assistant to manage that change for you? Anticipating change reduces the victimization of it. A couple of resources for you in your books. Go to store.realtor and get the Swanepoel Trends Report. Whew, man, there was a lot of content in there. It actually took me a couple of days to get through it all. But Stefan Swanepoel and his team are looking at what is impacting the industry now and in the future so we can make adjustments and change to it. The Danger Report. Yes, it's about 5, maybe 6 years old. It's free. NAR commissioned Swanepoel and his team to do the Danger Report, but those dangers to our industry, I understand why we call them dangers. It's very sensationalized and get your attention, but I looked at those as opportunities. Every one of those things, every one of those potential problems that they're putting out there for MLS and associations and brokers and agents are things I'm like, if I adjust to them now, how can I overcome this being a dilemma in my transaction? How can it make me more competitive by looking at what he's predicting now, because his predictions are almost always true, so that I can be in advance of that. I can be telling my story now to consumers, so when those changes happen. And Emin. Admittedly, I don't read the comments in Emin articles anymore because there's some craziness out there. And yes, some of Brad Emin's posts and articles are inflammatory and they're clickbait to get us mad about things. But outside of that layer, there is some incredibly good content and resources and articles about the future of technology and practices and all these things we've been talking and breaking down. And then lastly is magazine.realtor. You should be, I know we get a lot of email. This is one that you should be getting. This is one place you should be getting, researching the stuff. They put out a ton of information about what's happening in the future and happening now that we can help be more informed. I said it last, but I forgot another slide. NAR.realtor research and statistics. And if you aren't paying attention, Stephanie's doing an amazing job of putting the links here and so you can click them and save them. What was the read at store.realtor? The Stefan Swanepoel's Trends, T-R-E-N-D, Trends Report. And also NAR's research and statistics, it's showing you where we've been. Every year I read the profile home buyers and sellers and all the other reports, and I look at prior year's content to go, where are we headed in this so that we can adjust and adapt to those changes. And then Answer the Public. This is a non-realtor tool. Answer the Public, if you type in a topic like buyer commissions, it'll show you this whole list of other related contents and what the consumers are saying about it, what articles have been written about it, what data you can get on that so you can keep informed. But you need to have a plan at the end of the day. You need to know, what am I going to do when this new thing comes? And I use this adoption plan. So phase one is identify what the problem is. And I put problem in parentheses because that's how our industry attacks every change. Oh, new forms. Oh my gosh, we have to go figure those out now and get to them. Or new forms, man, I think it's gonna be better. I've been really hoping that we'd have better language in this one paragraph, and it appears that they did it. So now I just need to understand this. And if I understand the core contract really well, then minor changes aren't a big thing. Or again, we're shortening that chasm. So one, identify the problem. Number two, who are the stakeholders? Who does this problem impact? Remember my scenario earlier with the check. I knew that other agents, listing agents, are not going to be happy with the fact I'm not sending over a check. My buyers are going to be better protected. If I have to look at those two stakeholders, those two people who are involved in this decision, and my broker who's going to get a few phone calls, maybe if I'm not a broker already. Those are people impacted. How does this change work with them? What are some other solutions? Using deposit link as opposed to a check is a better solution. It's easier for everybody. I don't even have a checkbook. I haven't for years. So if I were a buyer, I wouldn't be able to write a check. I'd have to go get a cashier's check. But if you can send me a link, the deposit link or Zocam or whatever you're using, it's easier for me, the consumer. It's easier for you to track, and there's no security breaches or issues because that's an encrypted system and they're dealing with the security. How do I deploy this change now? Well, it's not a matter of just not sending over copies of checks. I need to get better solutions for my clients. I need to introduce that in the interview with the buyers and sellers. I need to create a timeline. How long will it take me to adjust to this? Something simple like a contract change that's being done to you, that adjustment should be like that. You read it, you know what it is. In your future, you're going to explain it that way. If you're introducing a new CRM to your team or to your company, you can't just cancel the old CRM. You got to do import time. You got to set it up. You got to make sure it's working. You may have to run two for a time. How long will that take? What's the deadline you're giving yourself to adapt to the change? What are the goals for that change? Is this change going to make you more money? Is it going to be a positive thing? Or are you just adjusting because the marketing industry, your clients required you to? How are you going to communicate that plan? If my plan right now is to start focusing on buyers, then I'm going to make sure that I have a great presentation for them, that I have the right series of videos set up for them to explain to them. I'm going to make sure that I can explain to my broker why I'm changing the practices here, while I'm spending more time with the seller explaining that the seller doesn't pay the commission. The commission comes out of the proceeds, and that this is the process I go through. This is what this is my value here. This is why and how you can pay me, or you can release me to negotiate these things with the seller as part of the transaction. And then phase 8 is deploy the solution. When I take these 8 processes, some things are very easy to apply to. I can make all 8 decisions just like that. Some things are more complex, but they always follow this formula for me. So the virtue of a business model is built on adaptability. My business model is built on adaptability. From the first day that I got licensed until now, I was the first with a website in my area. And I know we're running on time, so give me just 5 minutes over. I'm sorry. My broker called me and said, Matthew, you've got to stop messing with that web page. He goes, that's never going to make you any money. He says, you got to go out there and knock on doors and make cold calls and all the rest. I said, there's no way I'm doing that. I don't hold open houses. I'm not knocking on the door. I'm not doing anything to anybody that I wouldn't want done for me. I don't want anybody knocking on my door. I don't know anyone calling me who I don't know or calling me asking for business. I put that web page up, and for a very long time, it was the #1 search in Google forever. And I made a tremendous amount of money off of my web presence. Social media came out. I was the first one to grab an account, and I was putting content out there and engaging people and following people. And it made me successful enough that I got to senior positions in the firms to teach these things and do those things. And it worked very well. If you need a system or a platform to help you manage the chaos, ClickUp is free, and it is a very, very good tool to use to manage everything. You can set up your processes, your levels of stakeholders, your communication programs, especially if you're working with a team. This will help you centralize a lot of the chaos and a lot of the systems that we work on, so that we're ready to adapt and adjust to the things that we are putting in a plan. Most of the big things that we're talking about under change management are not just, okay, I'll just change and use new forms. I'll just not send a check over. I'll just start telling the buyer they have to pay my commission. That'll be easy. I need a long-term plan, and I need some place to put those ideas. That reticulating brain issue, these ideas noodles around in your head until they find a home. So whether it's a to-do list or whatever, like some of you are going, I put it in my notepad, see, and you pull out this notepad that looks like it's been through war and back. You can't search that. You can't find it. It doesn't organize. You can't engage that. All it has is a list at that point. Making these things work on platforms like ClickUp and others are going to help you be better suited for change and adjusting your mindset to those changes. As we end, breathe. Change is going to be constant. It is not going to slow down. There's going to be a new website, a new tool, a new application, a new lawsuit, a new company association policy, a new regulation. Every day, that's who we are as an industry. That's what we do. Taking the time to taking a weekend now to set up a tool where you can brain dump and put those future plans together, using SWOT analysis to write down what the future looks like and what changes you're hearing or thinking are going to occur, and starting to build a plan for that allows you to buy time to centralize the processes in your brain and to move forward. And so I want to thank you for the time that you spent with me again, and for breathing. A lot of information, short time. There's a couple of resources, websites, and tools I think you should go look at, but schedule time for it. Make sure you're working at Discipline Life I talked about earlier, and you say, okay, 1 hour a week is research. And I'm going to spend time with some of the resources that Matthew gave me earlier today, so that I can spend that 1 hour a week to read as much as I can, make my notes and ClickUp or Todoist or whatever tool you're using, and then start building a better, healthier plan in the future where it's easier for you to adapt to the change. If you want more information about me, you can go to my website. I gave you the link earlier, and it's on the screen right now. And certainly follow me on social. I share a lot of this stuff. And again, I really appreciate you being here, and very much appreciate NAR asking me to be here. If you need anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you however I can.